My husband swore under oath. She drinks and neglects the kids. The judge was about to rule. That's when my 11-year-old daughter, Emma, stood up in the gallery, tears streaming down her face, and raised her tablet. "I recorded everything," she said. The video showed exactly who had been drinking and neglecting whom. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. The courtroom went silent. My lawyer, Patricia, sat frozen beside me. Richard's attorney half rose from his chair. Even the bailiff forgot to tell Emma to sit down. And my husband, Richard Mitchell, respected accountant, beloved Little League coach, the man I'd been married to for 15 years, turned a shade of white I'd never seen before. I should explain how we got here. My name is Sandra Mitchell. I'm 43 years old. I was a stay-at-home mother for 12 years until Richard decided he didn't want me anymore. Until he decided to take everything, the house, the savings, and most importantly, my children. The divorce was his idea. He announced it on a Tuesday evening in April, right after I'd finished making his favorite dinner, roast chicken with rosemary potatoes. The kids were upstairs doing homework. "I've been unhappy for a long time," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "I've already talked to a lawyer. I want the house, primary custody of the kids, and half of everything else." I remember laughing. I actually laughed because I thought he was joking. "Richard, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about ending this marriage. I'm talking about starting over." He finally looked at me. His eyes were cold. "I've already found an apartment. I'm moving out this weekend. 12 years. 12 years of sacrificing my career. 12 years of cooking his meals, washing his clothes, raising his children. 12 years of being the perfect wife." And he threw it away with the same casual tone he'd used to cancel a dentist appointment. "What about Emma and Ethan?" I asked. Emma was 11 then. Ethan was 14. "They're coming with me, obviously." "Obviously? Richard, I'm their mother. You're also unstable, drinking during the day, neglecting your responsibilities." He shook his head like he was talking about a disappointing employee. "The court will see what I see. A woman who's let herself go." I couldn't breathe. Drinking during the day? I'd had one glass of wine at a friend's luncheon a month ago. Neglecting my responsibilities? I'd spent the last 12 years doing nothing but responsibilities. "Richard, you're lying. You know you're lying." "I know what I've observed." He stood up, leaving his dinner untouched. "My lawyer says it won't take long. These things usually don't when there's evidence of unfitness." Evidence of unfitness. He said it so casually, like he wasn't planning to destroy my life. That night, after Richard left to clear his head, I went upstairs to check on the kids. Emma was sitting on her bed, her tablet clutched to her chest. She'd been crying. "I heard everything," she said. "He's lying. Daddy's lying about you." I sat down beside her and pulled her into my arms. "I know, baby. I know. Why would he say those things?" I didn't have an answer. I didn't understand it myself. Richard and I had our problems. What marriage doesn't? But I'd never imagined he was capable of this kind of cruelty. "I don't want to live with Daddy," Emma said, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "I want to stay with you. Nothing's been decided yet. And no matter what happens, I'm always going to be your mom. Nothing changes that." But even as I said it, I felt the fear creeping in. Richard was smart. He was connected. He'd been planning this while I was obliviously making his dinner. What else had he planned? The next few months were a nightmare. Richard moved out but maintained control of the family finances. My name wasn't on any of the accounts. I'd trusted him to handle everything. Suddenly, I couldn't pay for groceries, couldn't fill up my car, had to ask my sister Laura for money just to keep the lights on. Richard's lawyer filed motion after motion, claiming I was mentally unstable, claiming I had a substance abuse problem, claiming I was emotionally abusive to the children. Each claim was a lie, but each claim required a response, documentation, court appearances, legal fees I couldn't afford. "He's trying to bankrupt you," my lawyer Patricia told me. We'd met through a domestic violence support group, not because Richard had ever hit me, but because emotional abuse counts too, and Patricia had seen enough of it to recognize the signs. It's a common tactic. Bury the other side in legal costs until they have to give up. "I'm not giving up my children. I know you're not, but we need to be smart about this. We need evidence of our own. evidence. That's when Emma's role became clear. I didn't ask her to do anything. I need to be clear about that. I never asked my 11-year-old daughter to record her father. She did it on her own, because she saw things I didn't see, things that happened when I wasn't around. Daddy brings her to the apartment, Emma told me one night after coming back from a court-ordered visitation. Her, being Richard's new girlfriend, though he denied having one. She stays over. She makes breakfast for us. He says to call her Aunt Kelly. Kelly. The name rang a bell. Richard's administrative assistant, 26 years old. He'd mentioned her a few times, always professionally, of course. Does Daddy drink when you're there? Emma nodded. A lot. Ethan says it's normal for adults to drink, but Daddy gets mean. He yells at us for little things. Last time he threw his phone at the wall because Ethan didn't answer fast enough. My heart was breaking. Not for me. For my children. They were living through a nightmare, and I couldn't protect them. Have you told anyone else about this? Emma shook her head. Daddy says if I tell, the judge will take us away from both of you. He says we'll end up in foster care. Richard. Even in his cruelty, he was strategic, scaring an 11-year-old into silence, making her complicit in her own harm. That's not true, sweetheart. The judge won't send you to foster care. The judge just wants to make sure you're safe. But how will the judge know who's telling the truth? I didn't have an answer for that either. A week later, Emma came home from visitation with a strange look on her face. Not scared, not sad. Something else. Mom, she said. I figured something out. What's that, baby? She held up her tablet. Daddy doesn't know this can record video. Emma's recording started small. A video of Richard yelling at Ethan for leaving his shoes in the hallway. An audio clip of Kelly, Aunt Kelly, telling Emma she was too chubby and needed to eat less. A 20-second clip of Richard stumbling to the refrigerator at 2 a.m., clearly drunk. I didn't know about any of it at first. Emma kept her evidence secret, building her case like a tiny prosecutor in training. It wasn't until 3 weeks before the custody hearing that she showed me what she'd collected. I have 47 videos, she said, opening a folder on her tablet, and 32 audio recordings. I stared at the screen. Dozens of thumbnails, dozens of moments of pain and neglect, documented by my 11-year-old daughter. Emma, when did you? I just hit record whenever Daddy wasn't looking. The tablet is quiet. He never noticed. I watched a few of the videos. Richard screaming at Ethan about grades, Kelly making snide comments about my cooking. Richard passed out on the couch at 3 in the afternoon while the kids fended for themselves. Richard on the phone with someone, his lawyer, laughing about how easy it was going to be to bury Sandra. Each video was a knife to my heart, not because of what Richard was doing to me, because of what he was doing to our children while claiming to be their protector. We need to show this to Patricia, I said. Emma nodded solemnly. I know, Mom. That's why I recorded it, so someone would believe us. Patricia's reaction was exactly what I needed. Oh my God, she said, scrolling through the files. Sandra, this changes everything. It's more than enough. Richard claimed you were an unfit mother. These videos show him drunk, neglectful, and verbally abusive. They show his girlfriend living with the children without proper disclosure. They show him coaching Ethan to lie about you. I hadn't seen that last one. Patricia pulled it up. Richard's face filled the screen. He was leaning close to the camera. He must have thought he was alone with Ethan. Remember what we talked about. You tell the judge that Mom drinks wine every night, that she forgets to pick you up from practice, that she locks herself in her room for hours. Ethan's voice, off-screen. But that's not true. It doesn't matter if it's true. What matters is what the judge believes. Do you want to end up in some group home? Do you want Mom to go to jail for neglecting you? A pause. Then Ethan, barely audible. No. Then you tell the judge what I told you to say. Understand? I couldn't watch anymore. Patricia stopped the video. When was this recorded? 2 weeks ago, I said. Right before the custody evaluation. Richard submitted a statement from Ethan supporting his claims. This video shows that statement was coerced. Coerced. My ex-husband had coerced our 14-year-old son into lying, had threatened him with foster care and my imprisonment just to win a custody battle. What do we do with this? I asked. Normally, I'd submit it as evidence before the hearing. Give Richard's team time to review it. Patricia smiled. A rare expression for her. But Richard's been playing dirty from the start. I think it's time we gave him a taste of his own medicine. I mean, we save the best evidence for the hearing itself. Let Richard tell his lies under oath. Then we show the judge exactly who he really is. It was risky. Patricia explained that judges don't like surprises. But she also explained that Richard's lawyer had been pulling dirty tricks for months, submitting evidence at the last minute, scheduling depositions when I couldn't attend, making allegations they knew were false. He's counting on you being passive, Patricia said. He's counting on you being the victim. Time to show him you're a fighter. The custody hearing was scheduled for October 15th, 4 days away. 4 days to prepare. 4 days to be terrified. 4 days to hope that the truth would finally matter. Richard called me the night before the hearing. I almost didn't answer. Sandra. His voice was different, softer. I've been thinking. Maybe we should try to work this out. The custody arrangement. We don't need to put the kids through a trial. I'm willing to agree to joint custody. 50-50. You get the house on weekends, I keep it during the week. I get the house on weekends? Keep it? Like he was doing me a favor by letting me have part-time access to the home I'd made for 12 years. Why the sudden change of heart? I just think we've both been too emotional, too adversarial. The kids are suffering. The kids are suffering because of you. I wanted to scream. Because you lied and manipulated and scared them into silence. I'll think about it, I said instead. Don't think too long. This offer expires when court opens tomorrow. After I hung up, I called Patricia. He's worried, she said immediately. He's heard we have something. He's trying to settle before we can use it. Should I take the offer? Absolutely not. His offer is garbage. Weekend access to your own home? He'd still control everything. And more importantly, Patricia's voice hardened. He needs to face consequences. What he did to those children, what he tried to do to you, that can't just be swept under the rug. What if the judge doesn't believe Emma's videos? Then we lose. But Sandra, you've seen those videos. Any judge who sees them will know exactly who Richard Mitchell really is. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in Laura's guest room. I'd been staying with my sister since Richard cut off my access to the family accounts, and stared at the ceiling, imagining every possible outcome, every way Richard could spin this, every lie he might tell. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Drop the case or you'll regret it. I stared at the message. Then I screenshotted it and sent it to Patricia. He's threatening you now, she texted back. Good. That means he's scared. See you at 9 a.m. Morning came too fast and too slow at the same time. I dressed carefully, professional but warm. Patricia had advised me not to look too severe. You're a mother, she'd said. The judge needs to see a mother. Emma wanted to come to the hearing. I said no at first. It wasn't appropriate for a child to watch her parents fight in court. But Emma was insistent. I need to be there, Mom. I need to show the judge myself. Emma, your recordings are enough. You don't need to. The recordings show what Daddy did, but I need to show who I am, who we are. Her eyes, so much older than 11, met mine. Please, Mom. I've been invisible this whole time. Let me be seen. We arrived at the courthouse at 8:45. Patricia was waiting by the entrance. She hugged me. The first time she'd ever done that. But let's do it anyway. Richard was already in the courtroom when we entered. He sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer, looking confident. When he saw Emma behind me, his expression flickered. Surprise, then something else. He knows, I thought. He knows she has something. The bailiff called the court to order. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s named Judge Morrison, took her seat. We're here in the matter of Mitchell vs. Mitchell, she announced. Custody hearing. Mitchell, you filed the original petition. Let's begin. Richard's lawyer stood, smoothed his tie, started to speak, and everything Richard had built began to fall apart. Richard's lawyer was named Bradley Thornton. He was expensive, aggressive, and very good at his job. For the first hour of the hearing, he painted a picture of me that I barely recognized. Mrs. Mitchell has a documented pattern of alcohol abuse, he said, holding up papers. Witnesses have observed her drinking wine at inappropriate hours. Her children have reported finding empty bottles hidden around the house. Lies. All lies. But they sounded so official, so carefully documented. Furthermore, Thornton continued, Mrs. Mitchell has demonstrated emotional instability. She's been observed crying in public. She's made irrational accusations against my client. She's attempted to alienate the children from their father. Patricia squeezed my hand under the table. Stay calm, the gesture said. Our turn is coming. Thornton called his first witness, a neighbor named Dorothy Crane. I barely knew the woman. She lived 3 houses down, and we'd exchanged maybe 50 words in 10 years. Mrs. Crane, you submitted an affidavit stating you witnessed Mrs. Mitchell in a state of intoxication. Can you describe that incident? Dorothy nodded primly. It was last March. I saw her stumbling out to get the mail around 2 in the afternoon. She could barely walk straight. I wanted to scream. March. I'd had foot surgery in March. I was on crutches and pain medication. The stumbling she saw was me trying to navigate my porch on 1 foot. Did you see any evidence of alcohol consumption? Well, I've seen wine deliveries to their house. Lots of them. Wine deliveries. Richard ordered wine online for himself. I rarely touched the stuff. Patricia stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Crane, are you aware that Mrs. Mitchell had surgery on her foot in March and was using crutches during the period you described? Dorothy hesitated. No, I wasn't aware. So the stumbling you observed could have been entirely due to a medical condition? No further questions. 1 down. But Thornton had more. He called a psychologist next. A man named Dr. Bernard, who had somehow produced a report claiming I showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder with alcoholic tendencies. I'd never met Dr. Bernard. He'd based his report entirely on information provided by Richard. In your professional opinion, Thornton asked, would it be safe for children to be in Mrs. Mitchell's primary care? Based on the evidence I reviewed, no. There's significant risk of emotional and physical neglect. Patricia was on her feet immediately. Objection. This expert has never personally evaluated my client. He reviewed documentation, Thornton started. Documentation provided solely by the petitioner. This is hearsay masquerading as expert testimony. Judge Morrison considered for a moment. Objection sustained. Bernard, the court will give limited weight to opinions not based on direct evaluation. Small victories. But Thornton wasn't finished. His final witness was the one I'd been dreading. Ethan, my own son. Ethan walked to the witness stand with his head down. He wouldn't look at me. His hands were shaking. Ethan, Thornton said gently, I know this is difficult. Just tell the truth. Did your mother drink alcohol regularly? A long pause. Yes. Did she sometimes forget to pick you up from school or practice? Did she ever lock herself in her room and refuse to speak to you or your sister for hours? Another pause. Longer this time. Yes. Each answer was a knife. Not because they were true, they weren't, but because my son was being forced to say them, because Richard had broken him into compliance. Patricia approached gently for cross-examination. Ethan, you said your mother drinks alcohol regularly. Can you describe what that looks like? She has wine sometimes. I don't know. Sometimes. Once a week? Once a month? Ethan's eyes darted to his father. I don't know. Ethan, has anyone told you what to say today? Objection, Thornton said quickly. Counsel is badgering the witness. Withdrawn, Patricia said, but she'd made her point. The judge was watching Ethan carefully now. When Ethan left the stand, Thornton rested his case. Richard looked satisfied. He thought he'd won. He had no idea what was coming. "Mrs. Holloway," Judge Morrison said, "you may present your response." Patricia stood. "Your Honor, we've heard a great deal of testimony today. Allegations of alcohol abuse, neglect, instability, all of it presented without direct evidence, based on hearsay and coerced statements." She walked to our table and picked up Emma's tablet. "We would like to present video evidence that will show the court who is truly guilty of the behavior described today." Thornton was on his feet. "Your Honor, we've had no opportunity to review this evidence. The defense has consistently submitted evidence at the last minute throughout these proceedings," Patricia replied. "They've scheduled depositions without proper notice, filed motions at midnight. They don't get to complain about surprises now." Judge Morrison nodded slowly. "I'll allow it. But if this is a waste of the court's time, there will be consequences." Patricia connected the tablet to the courtroom's display system. The screen on the wall flickered to life. "Your Honor, what you're about to see was recorded by the Mitchell children during court-ordered visitation with their father. We have 47 video clips and 32 audio recordings. We'll present the most relevant ones." The first video played. Richard in his apartment, a whiskey glass in hand. Emma's voice from off-screen. "Dad, I'm hungry." Richard's response. "Make yourself something. I'm busy. There's nothing in the fridge. Then order pizza. Use my card. Just leave me alone." The timestamp showed 6:15 p.m., dinner time. Richard couldn't be bothered to feed his children. The second video was worse. Richard screaming at Ethan about homework. "You're just like your mother, stupid and useless. I don't know why I even try." Ethan's voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Dad. Sorry isn't good enough. You're going to fail at everything, just like she did." In the gallery, Emma was crying silently. I wanted to hold her, but I couldn't move. The third video showed Kelly, Aunt Kelly, in the kitchen in a bathrobe. She was telling Emma to get out of the way. "Some of us are actually important around here." Mitchell claimed he was not in a relationship, Patricia noted. This video is from July. His initial filing was in April. Richard's face was pale. Thornton was whispering furiously in his ear. But the worst was yet to come. Patricia pulled up the video of Richard coaching Ethan. The one where he told his son to lie about me, where he threatened foster care and jail, where he broke a 14-year-old boy to serve his own agenda. The courtroom was silent when it ended. Judge Morrison removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was ice. "Mitchell, you testified under oath that Mrs. Mitchell was an unfit mother. You claimed she drank excessively and neglected your children. You presented witnesses who supported these claims." Richard tried to stand. "Your Honor, those videos are taken out of context. Sit down. It wasn't a request. What I've just seen is clear evidence of parental alienation, coercion of a minor witness, false testimony, and a pattern of neglect and verbal abuse that would make any court question your fitness as a parent." "I'm not finished." Judge Morrison turned to Emma, still sitting in the gallery. "Young lady, you recorded these videos?" Emma nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Because no one believed us. Mom told the truth, but Daddy had all the lawyers and the paperwork and the witnesses. We didn't have anything." Emma's voice grew stronger. "So I made something. I made the truth something people could see." Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "What you did took enormous courage. I want you to know that." She turned back to the lawyers. "This hearing is recessed until tomorrow morning. But I'll say this now, so there are no illusions. Mr. Mitchell's petition for primary custody is denied. We'll discuss the remaining arrangements tomorrow, but this case is effectively decided." Richard stood up. His face was red, his fists clenched. "This is bullshit," he said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Those recordings were illegal. You can't use them. One more outburst and you'll be held in contempt." Judge Morrison gathered her papers. "Court is adjourned." As the bailiff let us out, I looked at Richard one last time. He was staring at Emma with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure hatred, directed at an 11-year-old girl. I knew then that this wasn't over. Richard had lost the battle, but he would never stop fighting the war, and my children would be caught in the crossfire. The next morning, Richard didn't show up to court. His lawyer appeared alone, looking uncomfortable. "Your Honor, my client is indisposed. We request a continuance." "Denied." Judge Morrison wasn't in a merciful mood. "We'll proceed without him. His testimony is already on record." What followed was almost anticlimactic after the drama of the previous day. Patricia presented our case, my actual parenting record, statements from Emma's teachers and Ethan's coaches, evidence of my 12 years of devoted motherhood. The contrast with Richard's performance was stark. Judge Morrison's ruling was decisive. Full custody to me. Richard would have supervised visitation only, pending a psychological evaluation. The family home was to remain in my possession. Richard was ordered to pay spousal support and child support, calculated based on his actual income, which, it turned out, was significantly higher than he'd disclosed. Additionally, Judge Morrison added, "I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office. The evidence suggests possible perjury and obstruction of justice." I sat frozen. Perjury, criminal charges. This was more than I'd ever expected. Patricia squeezed my hand. "It's over," she whispered. "You won, but it wasn't over." Not really. Richard called that night. He'd been drinking. I could tell from his voice. "You think you've won?" he slurred. "This isn't over. I'm going to appeal. I'm going to fight this until you have nothing left." "Richard, please, just accept the outcome. Move on." "Move on? You turned my own daughter against me. You put her up to this." "I didn't put Emma up to anything. She recorded what she saw. She's 11 years old. She doesn't know what she saw. You manipulated her. Like you manipulated Ethan? I'm going to destroy you, Sandra. One way or another. You'll regret this." I told Patricia about the call the next morning. She wasn't surprised. "He's in denial. He's going to go through stages. Anger, bargaining, maybe eventually acceptance. In the meantime, we need to document everything. Every call, every text, every contact. If he violates the custody order or makes threats, we need evidence." She paused. "Also, I'd recommend changing your locks and getting a security system." I'd won custody, but now I needed to protect my home from my children's father. The irony wasn't lost on me. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of relief and fear. I was back in my own home. The kids were with me. We were starting to rebuild some semblance of normal life. But Richard loomed over everything. He'd been ordered to stay away except for supervised visitation. But he found ways to make his presence known. Driving slowly past the house, showing up at Ethan's baseball games and watching from the parking lot, sending gifts to Emma that I had to intercept, expensive presents with guilt-inducing notes attached. Ethan was struggling. He felt guilty about his testimony, even though I'd told him 100 times it wasn't his fault. He'd withdrawn from his friends, his grades were slipping, and he barely spoke at dinner. "Do you think Dad hates me now?" he asked one night. "No, sweetheart. Your dad loves you. He's just going through a hard time. I lied for him. In court. I said things about you that weren't true. I know. And it's okay. He put you in an impossible position, but I still did it. I chose him over you." I pulled Ethan into a hug. He was 14, almost as tall as me now, but in that moment he felt like a little boy again. "You didn't choose anyone. You survived. That's all any of us can do when someone we love is hurting us." Emma was different. She seemed almost lighter after the hearing, like a burden had been lifted. She started sleeping better, laughing more, acting like the kid she was supposed to be. But she also had a hardness now that worried me. A wariness around adults, especially men. A tendency to document everything, to take pictures and make notes, like she was building another case. Just in case. What had Richard done to my little girl? Patricia and I met regularly to review Richard's behavior. Each time, he'd pushed closer to the line without quite crossing it. Until November. The incident happened at Ethan's school. Richard wasn't supposed to be there. The custody order specifically prohibited him from approaching the children at school. But he showed up anyway. Waited in the parking lot until Ethan came out. "I just want to talk," he said, according to witnesses. "Just 5 minutes. Father to son." Ethan tried to walk past him. Richard grabbed his arm. "Don't you dare walk away from me. I'm your father. A teacher intervened. Richard left before the police arrived, but the damage was done. Ethan came home shaking, barely able to speak. He said I ruined his life, Ethan whispered. He said he'd never forgive me. I called Patricia immediately. By the next morning, we'd filed for a restraining order. The hearing was brief. Richard showed up this time, but he was a shell of his former self. He'd lost weight. His suit was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved in days. Your Honor, my client is going through a difficult period. His new lawyer, Thornton had apparently dropped him, argued weakly. He made a mistake, but he's committed to following the court's orders going forward. Judge Morrison wasn't moved. Mitchell has demonstrated a pattern of disregard for this court's orders. He approached his son at school in direct violation of the custody agreement. He made statements that constitute emotional abuse. She turned to Richard. You're hereby ordered to maintain a distance of at least 500 feet from your children, their schools, and their mother's residence. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. Richard didn't react. He just stared at the table in front of him. As we left the courthouse, I felt Patricia's hand on my arm. Don't feel sorry for him. I don't feel sorry for him. I feel sad for what we used to be, for what our family used to be. Your family is still here. You and Emma and Ethan. That's what matters now. She was right. I knew she was right, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing in the eye of a hurricane, that the worst was still coming. 3 weeks later, I found out I was right. The phone rang at 2 a.m., an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer. Mrs. Mitchell? A woman's voice. This is Officer Chen with the police department. We need you to come to Memorial Hospital. What? What happened? Your son Ethan has been admitted. He's stable, but he's asked for you. What happened to Ethan? A pause. Ma'am, I think it's best if you come to the hospital. We can explain everything there. I threw on clothes and drove through empty streets, my hands shaking on the wheel. Emma was at Laura's for the night. Thank God for small mercies. At the hospital, Officer Chen met me at the entrance. She was young, serious, sympathetic. Your son was found unconscious in the park near your home. He'd ingested a significant amount of alcohol. Alcohol? Ethan doesn't drink. He does tonight. We also found this. She held up an evidence bag. Inside was a note, written in Ethan's handwriting. I can't do this anymore. It's all my fault. I ruined everything. My legs gave out. Officer Chen caught me before I hit the floor. He's going to be okay, she said quickly. They pumped his stomach. He's awake now, asking for you. I stumbled toward Ethan's room. He was lying in the hospital bed, looking small and pale, and nothing like the 14-year-old boy I'd sent off to school that morning. Mom, he croaked. I'm sorry. I couldn't speak. I just held him and cried. Later, when Ethan was asleep, Officer Chen sat with me in the waiting room. We've opened an investigation, she said. Based on the note and your son's statements, we believe this may be connected to the custody situation. I can't say more right now, but I wanted you to know. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. Maybe not. But it had happened on my watch. My son had tried to kill himself because of a war he never asked to be part of. And Richard? Somewhere out there, beyond the restraining order and the court orders and all the legal protections that were supposed to keep us safe, Richard was still pulling the strings. This had to end, one way or another. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Ethan, once he was stable enough to talk, told the police everything. Richard had been contacting him secretly for weeks. Burner phones, anonymous email accounts, messages that oscillated between guilt-tripping and threats. He said if I testified against him, he'd make sure I never got into college. Ethan told the detective. He said he had connections. He could ruin my future. Did you believe him? I didn't know what to believe. He's my dad. But also, Ethan's voice cracked. He's not my dad anymore. Not the dad I remember. The burner phone messages were traced back to Richard. So was the email account. And the night Ethan ended up in the hospital, Richard had sent one final message. I hope you understand now how much you've hurt me. Everything that happens next is on you. Richard was arrested that night. The charges: harassment, violation of a restraining order, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. The district attorney's office was also moving forward with the perjury charges from the original custody hearing. Patricia called me with the news. He's being held without bail. The judge considers him a flight risk. Will he go to prison? Possibly. The charges are serious. But more importantly, he can't hurt your family anymore. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt empty. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, a life built together, and it had come to this. My ex-husband in jail, my son in a psychiatric hold, my daughter hardened beyond her years. Was this what victory looked like? Ethan spent 2 weeks in the hospital's psychiatric unit. I visited every day. At first, he barely spoke. Then, gradually, he started to open up. I didn't really want to die, he said one afternoon. We were sitting in the common room, playing cards. I just wanted the feelings to stop. Guilt, fear, the feeling that no matter what I did, I'd be betraying someone. He looked at me. Dad made me feel like I had to choose. You or him. And when I chose you, when Emma's video showed what I'd said in court, I felt like I'd destroyed him. You didn't destroy him, Ethan. He destroyed himself. I know that now. The therapist here has been helping me see it. He set down his cards. She says I was traumatized, that what Dad did to me was a form of abuse. Abuse. Such a heavy word for a father's actions, but it was the right word. She's right. What your father did, the manipulation, the coercion, the threats, that's not how a parent should treat a child. Then why did he do it? I didn't have a good answer. I'd been asking myself the same question for months. I think your dad was scared. Scared of losing control. Scared of being alone. And when he got scared, he hurt the people closest to him, including all of us. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't want to see him. Not now, maybe not ever. That's your choice. No one will force you. Do you think I'm a bad person? For not wanting to see my own father? I reached across the table and took his hand. I think you're the bravest person I know, and I think you have the right to protect yourself. Even from family. Especially from family. Emma came to visit that weekend. The reunion was awkward at first. Ethan felt ashamed. Emma felt scared. But by the end of the day, they were almost like their old selves, teasing each other, playing video games in the common room, acting like siblings instead of survivors. I'm glad you're okay, Emma told Ethan. When Mom got the call, I thought... She couldn't finish the sentence. I know. I'm sorry I scared you. Don't be sorry. Just don't do it again. Promise? Ethan smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from him in months. Promise. When Ethan was released from the hospital, he came home to a different world. The restraining order was still in place. Richard was still in jail awaiting trial. And our family was starting slowly to heal. But the scars remained. Emma still recorded things. Not as much as before, but sometimes I'd catch her with her tablet aimed at a conversation, a meeting, a moment that made her nervous. It was her way of feeling safe. I didn't have the heart to tell her to stop. Ethan saw a therapist twice a week. He was making progress, but there were still dark days. Days when he wouldn't leave his room. Days when the guilt threatened to swallow him whole. And me? I was learning to be a single mother. Learning to manage a household alone. Learning to sleep without fear for the first time in almost a year. The trial was set for spring. Patricia prepared us for what to expect. Testimony, cross-examination, the whole ugly process of putting our family's destruction on public display. Richard's lawyer will try to paint him as a victim, she warned, a father driven to desperation by an unfair system. He'll minimize his actions and maximize yours. Not with this judge, not with this evidence, but it might get ugly. Richard's defense was exactly what Patricia predicted. A desperate father, alienated from his children, pushed to the breaking point by a vindictive ex-wife. His lawyer painted me as a manipulator, Emma as a brainwashed child, Ethan's hospitalization as proof that I was an unfit mother. If Mrs. Mitchell was such a good parent, the lawyer argued, why did her son try to take his own life? Patricia was on her feet immediately. Objection. Mitchell's harassment directly contributed to Ethan's crisis. The defense is blaming the victim. The trial lasted 3 days. 3 days of reliving every painful moment of the past year. 3 days of hearing Richard's voice, seeing his face, remembering the man I'd once loved. By the end, I was exhausted, but I was also ready. Emma testified. She was calm, clear, and devastating. She walked the jury through every video, every recording, every moment of fear and neglect she'd witnessed. Why did you record your father? The prosecutor asked. Because no one was listening. Because grown-ups kept believing his lies. Because I had to make the truth something they could see. And what is the truth, Emma? Emma looked at her father. He sat at the defense table, smaller somehow than he'd ever been. The truth is that my dad forgot how to be a dad. He forgot that we're people, not trophies. He forgot that loving us meant putting us first, not using us to win. She turned back to the prosecutor. I recorded him because I was scared, and I kept recording because I knew eventually someone would care enough to watch. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, Richard didn't look up. Guilty, on all counts. Sentencing would come later, but Patricia said he was looking at 3 to 5 years. For harassment, for perjury, for the systematic destruction of his own family. I watched them lead Richard away in handcuffs. He still didn't look at me, didn't look at anyone. In that moment, I felt many things. Relief, grief, anger, loss. But mostly, I felt done. Done fighting. Done surviving. Done being afraid of the man I'd married. For the first time in a year, I was ready to start living again. Richard was sentenced to 4 years. He'd be eligible for parole in 2. I didn't go to the sentencing hearing. Neither did the kids. We'd spent enough time in courtrooms. It was time to move on. Moving on wasn't easy. The house was paid off now, part of the divorce settlement, but it felt haunted. Every room held memories. The kitchen where Richard announced he was leaving. The living room where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays. The bedroom we'd shared for 15 years. I considered selling, starting fresh somewhere else. But Emma and Ethan didn't want to leave. This was their home, their rooms, their friends, their school. Taking that away felt like letting Richard win one more time. So we stayed, and we rebuilt. The first thing I did was repaint. Every room, every wall, new colors. Emma chose pale blue for her bedroom. Ethan wanted dark green. I picked a warm cream for the living room. Something clean, something new. Laura came over to help. We spent a weekend with rollers and brushes covered in paint spatters, laughing at how terrible we were at edging. The kids joined in. For the first time in months, the house was filled with something other than tension. It's starting to feel like home again, Emma said, surveying her newly blue room. It is home. It always was. No, Mom. Before, it felt like we were just hiding here. Now it feels like we actually live here. She was right. We weren't hiding anymore. I went back to work. Part-time at first. My old firm had kept my position open, bless them, then full-time. It felt strange at first, using my brain for something other than survival. But I'd forgotten how much I loved accounting, the order of numbers, the satisfaction of a balanced sheet, the simple certainty of math. Ethan joined a support group for teenagers with divorced parents. He was resistant at first. I don't want to talk about feelings with strangers. But after a few sessions, he came home looking lighter. There's this kid, Marcus, he told me. His dad did something similar. Not as bad, but similar. It helps, knowing I'm not the only one. You were never the only one, sweetheart. There are always others who understand. I know that now. I needed to meet them myself. Emma stopped recording so much. She still carried her tablet everywhere. Old habits. But it wasn't her shield anymore. She started drawing instead. Animals, mostly. Horses and dogs and creatures I couldn't identify. That's a dragon cat, she explained. showing me one particularly elaborate sketch. It has wings and fur, and it breathes ice instead of fire. Because ice is more interesting. Fire just destroys things. Ice preserves them. I hugged her. She was 12 now. The birthday had been quiet, just family and a homemade cake, and in many ways, she seemed older than her years. But sometimes, like now, I could still see the little girl she'd been. Spring came slowly that year. The trees budded. The garden started blooming. And one afternoon in April, exactly 1 year after Richard announced he was leaving, I sat in my backyard and realized I was happy. Not deliriously happy, not problem-free happy, but a quiet, solid happiness, the kind that comes from surviving something terrible and discovering you're still standing. Emma found me there, sitting on the porch steps, watching the sunset. "What are you doing?" "About everything. About how much has changed." Emma sat down beside me. She was almost as tall as me now. "When had that happened?" "Do you hate him?" she asked. "Dad, I mean." I thought about the question. A year ago, I might have said yes. The anger had been so fresh, so consuming. "No," I said finally. "I don't hate him. I feel sorry for him in a way. He destroyed something precious because he couldn't control it. But you don't miss him?" "I miss who he used to be, or maybe who I thought he was." I looked at Emma. "Do you miss him?" "Sometimes. But then I remember the recordings, what he said about you, what he did to Ethan, and the missing goes away. That's okay. It's okay to have complicated feelings about someone you love." Did you love him, even after everything? Another question I'd been asking myself. I loved the idea of our family. I loved being a mother. I loved building a life with someone. I paused. But love someone who's hurting you, who's hurting your children, that's not really love. That's just fear wearing a disguise. Emma nodded slowly. "I'm never going to let someone treat me like that." "I hope not, sweetheart. I hope you find someone who respects you, who listens to you, who sees your strength instead of trying to break it." I smiled. "Yes, like Patricia." Patricia and I had grown closer over the past months. She'd started out as my lawyer, become my ally, and somewhere along the way had become my friend. We had dinner together sometimes, talked about things other than court cases and custody battles. She was teaching me that it was possible to trust someone again. Not romantically, that was a long way off, if ever. But trust, in its simplest form. Believing that someone meant what they said. Believing that not everyone had an angle. It was harder than I'd expected. Richard had done a number on my ability to believe in anyone. But slowly, one conversation at a time, I was learning. Summer came. Emma went to art camp. Ethan got a part-time job at a coffee shop. I worked on my own recovery, therapy, exercise, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected during the dark times. And one day in August, Richard's mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Sandra." Her voice was cool, formal. "I wanted you to know that Richard is doing well in prison. He's completed an anger management program. He's been writing letters to the children. He wanted to apologize, explain himself. He asked me to convince you to let them read them." I felt the old fear rising. The instinct to protect, to shield, to fight. But I wasn't afraid anymore. "Mrs. Mitchell, with respect, your son lost the right to contact his children when he drove Ethan to attempt suicide, when he used Emma as a pawn, when he lied in court and threatened and manipulated everyone who loved him." Maybe he has. I genuinely hope so. But changing doesn't undo the harm, and my children have a right to heal without having to manage their father's redemption arc. Silence on the other end. If Richard wants to write letters, he can write them. But Emma and Ethan will decide if and when they want to read them. That's their choice. Not his, not yours, not mine. You're keeping them from their father. I'm protecting them from the person their father became. There's a difference. I hung up before she could respond. That night, I told Emma and Ethan about the call, about the letters. "I don't want to read them," Emma said immediately. "Not now. Maybe not ever." Ethan was quieter. "Maybe someday, when I'm ready. When I can read them without feeling like everything is my fault." "That's exactly the right answer," I told him. "Someday, when you're ready, on your terms." "Do you think he's really changed?" I don't know, sweetheart. People can change. But change takes time, and accountability, and a lot of hard work. Words in a letter aren't enough. Ethan nodded. Then I'll wait. I'll wait until he's proven it with more than words. That was the moment I knew we were going to be okay. Not perfect, not whole in the way we'd been before, but okay, stronger, more honest about what we needed. Richard would get out of prison eventually. He might try to reconnect. He might continue his apologies, his explanations, his quest for forgiveness. But we'd be ready. Not to fight him. We were done fighting. But to stand in our truth, to hold our boundaries, to choose our own healing over his need for absolution. Emma had raised her tablet in that courtroom because no one was listening. Because the truth was invisible until she made it visible. Now we didn't need the tablet anymore. We had our voices, our choices, our lives rebuilt from the wreckage of everything Richard had tried to destroy. He had sworn under oath that I was unfit, that I drank and neglected and failed. But I was still standing, still mothering, still loving my children with everything I had. And that was the real truth, the one that mattered, the one no lie could ever erase. My husband tried to take everything from me, but my daughter saved us all. And in the end, that's the only story that matters.